Do this to outsmart the controlling narcissist, not by becoming more manipulative, not by becoming more aggressive, not by winning louder arguments, and not by proving that you are right. The moment you understand this, you gain an advantage most people never discover. A controlling narcissist is not playing the game you think they are playing. While you are focused on facts, fairness, honesty, and resolution, they are focused on control. That difference changes everything. Most people walk into these interactions believing that truth is the strongest weapon. They assume that if they explain clearly enough, provide enough evidence, or remain patient long enough, the other person will eventually understand. But the controlling narcissist is often not seeking understanding. They are seeking influence. They are seeking emotional leverage. They are seeking a reaction. They are measuring how much of your attention, energy, and emotional stability they can control. The first thing you must do is recognize the battlefield. The battlefield is not the conversation. The battlefield is your emotional state. The battlefield is your attention. The battlefield is your ability to stay grounded while someone else is trying to pull you into confusion, guilt, fear, obligation, or self-doubt. Once you understand that, the entire game changes. A controlling narcissist survives on predictable reactions. They study patterns. They learn what makes you defend yourself. They learn what makes you explain yourself. They learn what makes you angry. They learn what makes you feel guilty. Then they press those buttons over and over again, not because they are trying to solve a problem, but because they are trying to maintain control. The greatest mistake people make is believing they must respond to every accusation. They believe silence means surrender. They believe every false statement requires correction. They believe every insult requires defense. But the controlling narcissist often wins not because they are smarter, but because they convince you to fight battles that should never have been fought in the first place. Think about it. If someone can dictate what you think about all day, they control part of your life. If someone can dictate your emotional state whenever they choose, they control part of your life. If someone can make you lose sleep, lose focus, lose confidence, and lose peace, they have gained influence without earning it. The strongest move is often the move that looks weakest to an outsider. It is emotional non-participation. It is refusing to become emotionally hooked. It is recognizing bait for what it is and leaving it untouched. Every time you refuse unnecessary conflict, you take back power. Every time you refuse to defend yourself against a ridiculous accusation, you take back power. Every time you stop trying to convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, you take back power. Control requires access. The controlling narcissist needs access to your emotions. They need access to your attention. They need access to your reactions. Your goal is not revenge. Your goal is reducing access. Notice how often controlling people create urgency. Everything is an emergency. Everything demands an immediate response. Everything requires instant attention. Why? Because urgency bypasses critical thinking. Urgency creates emotional reactions. Urgency makes people easier to influence. When you slow down, you weaken their advantage. You do not need to answer every message immediately. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to justify every boundary. You do not need permission to protect your peace. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is this: what outcome am I actually trying to achieve? If the answer is peace, clarity, and freedom, then many arguments become unnecessary. If the answer is proving your worth to someone committed to devaluing you, you are chasing a destination that does not exist. A controlling narcissist often creates a moving target. The rules change. Expectations change. Standards change. Yesterday's success becomes today's failure. Yesterday's compliment becomes today's criticism. Why? Because a stable target allows you to succeed. A moving target keeps you chasing approval. And people who chase approval are easier to control. The solution is not becoming harder to please. The solution is refusing to make another person's approval the foundation of your identity. Your value is not determined by their opinion. Your competence is not determined by their criticism. Your character is not determined by their accusations. The moment you internalize that truth, their influence begins to shrink. Pay attention to patterns instead of promises. Controlling narcissists often make impressive promises. They make dramatic declarations. They offer grand explanations. But patterns reveal reality. Patterns reveal intent. Patterns reveal character. Anyone can make a promise. Not everyone can maintain a pattern. When someone's words and actions consistently contradict each other, believe the actions. Actions are expensive. Words are cheap. Another powerful strategy is mastering emotional neutrality. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean becoming robotic. It means learning to respond instead of react. There is enormous power in calmness. There is enormous power in composure. The person who controls their emotional state controls far more than the person who controls the conversation. Notice how manipulative people often become frustrated when their usual tactics stop working. Why? Because their strategy depends on predictability. When they expect panic and receive calmness, they lose footing. When they expect guilt and receive confidence, they lose leverage. When they expect emotional chaos and receive emotional stability, they lose influence. That is why your growth may initially increase resistance. The moment you establish boundaries, some people will test them. The moment you stop over-explaining, some people will demand explanations. The moment you stop seeking approval, some people will increase criticism. Do not mistake this resistance for failure. Often it is evidence that the old system is no longer working. Remember this. Boundaries are not requests for respect. Boundaries are decisions about your own behavior. You cannot control whether someone respects your boundary. You can control what you do when they ignore it. Strength is not found in forcing others to change. Strength is found in maintaining your standards, whether they change or not. The controlling narcissist wants your focus locked on them. Your mission is to redirect that focus back to your own life. Invest in your skills. Invest in your health. Invest in your purpose. Invest in relationships built on mutual respect. Every hour spent building yourself is an hour not spent feeding manipulation. The most dangerous thing to a controlling person is an individual who no longer depends on them emotionally. Not because that individual is angry, not because that individual is seeking revenge, but because that individual has discovered something more powerful than conflict: independence. And that is how you outsmart the controlling narcissist. You stop playing the game they designed. You stop measuring success by their reactions. You stop seeking validation from someone committed to withholding it. You stop explaining yourself to people who profit from misunderstanding you. You stop handing over emotional control. You become calm where they expect chaos. You become deliberate where they expect impulsiveness. You become confident where they expect self-doubt. You become focused where they expect distraction. And eventually, something remarkable happens. The person who once seemed powerful begins to look different. Not because they changed, because your perspective changed. You no longer see a giant. You see someone who depended on your reactions for their strength. The moment you reclaim ownership of your attention, your emotions, your standards, and your direction, the illusion of their power begins to disappear. And when that illusion disappears, so does their ability to control the course of your life. The controlling narcissist has one objective that sits above almost everything else: maintaining psychological dominance. Not necessarily physical dominance, not necessarily financial dominance, psychological dominance. The ability to influence how you feel, what you think about, what you worry about, and how you see yourself. Once you understand that, you begin to recognize why so many of their behaviors follow the same pattern. Have you ever noticed how some people seem strangely dissatisfied when problems are solved? Most people want solutions. Most people want peace. Most people want progress. But a controlling narcissist may become uncomfortable when genuine resolution appears. Why? Because resolution ends the cycle of control. Resolution removes leverage. Resolution creates independence. This is why many people become trapped for years trying to solve a problem that was never intended to be solved. They are working from the assumption that both parties want the same outcome. They think both sides want understanding, trust, cooperation, and stability. But if one side wants control more than connection, then the entire dynamic changes. The first breakthrough comes when you stop asking, "How do I make them understand?" and start asking, What is this behavior accomplishing for them? That single question reveals more than 1,000 arguments ever will. If every disagreement somehow ends with you defending yourself, there is a pattern. If every conversation somehow shifts attention away from their behavior and onto your flaws, there is a pattern. If every attempt at communication leaves you feeling confused, exhausted, or guilty, there is a pattern. Patterns tell the truth when words try to hide it. One of the most effective tactics used by controlling individuals is emotional fog. They create confusion because confusion weakens confidence. A confident person makes decisions. A confused person hesitates. A confident person trusts their judgment. A confused person seeks permission. A confident person moves forward. A confused person stays stuck. That confusion often doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives gradually, a small contradiction here, a subtle criticism there, a rewritten memory, a denied statement, a shifting story, a new accusation, another emotional demand. Over time, these experiences accumulate until you begin questioning your own perceptions. This is why clarity becomes a weapon, not a weapon against another person, but a weapon against manipulation. Write things down, observe patterns, pay attention to actions. Trust evidence over emotional pressure. The clearer your thinking becomes, the harder it is for someone else to define reality for you. Many people assume that confidence means having all the answers. Real confidence is different. Real confidence means remaining stable, even when you do not have immediate answers. It means being comfortable, saying, "I need time to think about that." It means refusing to make important decisions under emotional pressure. Pressure is one of the oldest manipulation tools in existence. If someone wants you to decide immediately, react immediately, agree immediately, apologize immediately, or surrender immediately, ask yourself why. What would happen if you took 24 hours to think? What would happen if you slowed the pace? Manipulation thrives in speed. Wisdom thrives in reflection. Another reality that many people struggle to accept is that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your inner world. Some individuals earn trust. Some individuals abuse trust. The ability to tell the difference is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. You do not owe everyone complete transparency. You do not owe everyone unlimited emotional access. You do not owe everyone detailed explanations. Information is power. The more someone demonstrates a pattern of using information against you, the more carefully you should consider what access they receive. This is not secrecy. This is discernment. There is a major difference. A controlling narcissist often studies vulnerabilities the way an investor studies opportunities. They pay attention to insecurities. They notice fears. They identify emotional pressure points. Then they store that information for future use. Many people mistakenly believe vulnerability automatically creates connection. Vulnerability creates connection only when trust exists. Without trust, vulnerability can become exposure. That is why emotional intelligence requires both openness and boundaries. One without the other creates imbalance. The strongest people are not those who trust nobody. The strongest people are those who trust wisely. Another critical insight is understanding the role of emotional addiction. Many toxic relationships survive not because they are healthy, but because they create emotional dependency. The highs feel intense. The lows feel devastating. The unpredictability creates obsession. When rewards are inconsistent, people often become more attached, not less. Think about a slot machine. If it never paid out, people would stop playing. If it paid out every single time, it would become predictable. The addiction exists because of uncertainty. Controlling narcissists often create a similar emotional environment. Moments of affection followed by withdrawal. Moments of praise followed by criticism. Moments of closeness followed by distance. This inconsistency keeps people focused on earning the next positive experience. The tragedy is that many intelligent people mistake this emotional roller coaster for love. Love creates security control, creates dependency. Love creates growth control, creates anxiety. Love expands your world. Control shrinks your world. The difference matters. One of the most liberating moments in life occurs when you stop chasing emotional rewards from people who intentionally make those rewards scarce. Imagine trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it never stays full. That is what happens when you seek validation from someone committed to keeping you uncertain. The answer is not pouring more water. The answer is finding a different bucket. Every minute spent proving your worth to the wrong person is a minute not spent building a life that reflects your worth. And make no mistake, controlling individuals often fear one thing more than confrontation. They fear irrelevance. Anger still gives them attention. Arguments still give them attention. Defensiveness still gives them attention. Obsession still gives them attention. But emotional detachment removes the fuel. When you no longer need their approval, their criticism loses force. When you no longer need their validation, their withholding loses force. When you no longer need their agreement, their opposition loses force. The power dynamic begins to change. This is why personal development is not merely self-improvement. It is self-protection. Every skill you develop increases independence. Every healthy relationship you build increases resilience. Every goal you achieve increases confidence. Every boundary you maintain increases self-respect. And self-respect is one of the greatest defenses against manipulation. A person who respects themselves does not need to win every argument. A person who respects themselves does not need universal approval. A person who respects themselves does not need permission to protect their peace. That does not mean life becomes easy. There will still be moments when you question yourself. There will still be moments when old patterns try to return. There will still be moments when emotional pressure feels overwhelming. But growth is not measured by never struggling. Growth is measured by recovering faster. Years ago, a criticism might have ruined your entire week. Now it affects a single afternoon. Years ago, manipulation might have changed your decisions. Now it merely reveals another person's intentions. Years ago, guilt might have controlled your actions. Now it simply signals that a boundary is being tested. That is progress. Do not underestimate small victories. Small victories become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. Every time you remain calm under pressure, you strengthen emotional discipline. Every time you trust evidence over manipulation, you strengthen judgment. Every time you maintain a healthy boundary, you strengthen self-respect. Every time you choose peace over unnecessary conflict, you strengthen wisdom.